Hey guys, Emily Muchanti here, and today I have a video for my reading interventionists, both new and well-versed. We are going to talk today about measuring the effectiveness of your Tier 2 and Tier 3 reading intervention programs and what that looks like. And we're going to really focus in on 5 key components of that. So first, I want to remind you to please like, subscribe, and share. Share this video with anybody in your area that you think might benefit. We talk about all things reading intervention for especially those new interventionists who are just getting programs started. So let's come back to where we are at this point in the year. First of all, it is at the time of this recording, end of April, which means that you are probably looking at collecting all of your year-end data. Okay, your end of the year window is happening now or soon. And so what we have to do with this data is still really important. In the beginning of the year or middle of the year data collection, what we're looking for really is how to group our students. Of course, we're also having an eye on our levels of success that we're having, but at the end of the year, our mindset kind of shifts just a little bit. We're not looking to group students at this point because we won't be seeing them for the next several months, and we'll have to collect more data for that. But what we're looking at really is to see over the course of the year, how effective was our program? Did the kids have the level of success that we had hoped? So the first thing I want to talk about is the importance of doing this. We have to spend time evaluating the impact that our interventions have on our students so that we can make constant and continuous improvements. The goal, of course, is to have our Tier 1 core instruction so rock solid that very few students are receiving intervention. So before we begin, please remember that Tier 1 instruction is the best form of prevention. We are looking to make sure that they are preventing future reading deficits. But with that being said, we know that there will always be a certain number of students who are going to need some extra support. And so at this point in the year, we want to actually take the data that we've been collecting, step back and see how did we do from a program system standpoint. So the first thing that we're going to look at is analyzing data. That's obviously the first thing we have to do. We have to look at the data. We don't just collect data so that the people who tell us to collect data can check off their little box. We have to actually do something with the data. So what we're looking at this point in the year is really a comparison between those benchmark windows. Where were your kids at the beginning of the year? Where are they now at the end of the year? Where were they at the middle of the year compared to where they are now? And we are looking at identifying growth trends or patterns. We need to look at those trends. Are we seeing a consistent number of students moving up? Are they making above typical progress? Because we know we get excited about any kind of progress that our students make, but it's really important to remember that at this point, with kids that are struggling, if we want to catch them up and actually close the gap, we have to make above typical progress. If we are only making typical progress, we are kind of just keeping them along that pretty low little pathway, and having them actually catch up is going to be far more challenging. So we're looking for the trends. What did we find successful? Were there certain areas or certain sub-skills in the data that we had amazing growth? Was the scores in the nonsense word fluency assessment in kindergarten, did those look really good? Did we have big changes in accuracy with our oral reading fluency? Were our kids more accurate? That is great. That means that they are starting to incorporate a number of those phonics patterns and skills in their decoding. And so we have to look at these trends in the data. And then what we have to do is use that to start making a plan for next year. One thing to consider is if you see broad groups of students, a number of students that are struggling in the same skill or in the same area, consider figuring out how to add or support that type of skill in tier 1. This happened to me. If you've seen my videos, you may have heard me talk about this. One year I came into a school, the data in the phoneme segmentation was very, very low. Come to find out, our core curriculum didn't have much in the way of phonemic awareness. And so we identified that out of these big benchmark time periods that we are assessing. What we did then is we purchased curriculum to support the teachers so that they could supplement in that particular area. When we come to find out our end of the year data with all of those kids both in tier 1 and in tier 2 and 3, huge improvements. So think outside of intervention. If there's a big gap or a big problem, what can you do to help support those classroom teachers in the way of resources or training or anything to that effect? The second thing we have to look at is really reflecting on the instructional practices that we have. Were the lesson plans effective? Did we utilize all of the instructional time that was needed? Typically, we have our kids for about 30 minutes. And so there might be a little bit of a transition time before and at the end of that, but we want to maximize all of that time. So was the structure of the group lesson, was it designed to maximize that actual time? Were there instructional materials that were appropriately matched to the skill deficit? This, we have to make sure that we are adding evidence-based, proven strategies and resources to really help expedite the growth that our students are going to need to make. We also have to reflect on the teaching strategies that we are using. Are we incorporating best practices? Are we having our students verbally respond? Are we adding in that oral language? Are we asking for choral responses? If we're still asking for hands to be raised in intervention, stop. Please stop. Every student must respond. We have to activate them. So looking at some of those finer points in how you are actually delivering that instruction in the strategies that you use is very important at this point in time. So also identify what really went well. What successes did you have? What did you walk away from in a day and go, ooh, that was a great teacher day? Those kinds of things where you can see that your kids are catching it, the light bulb clicks on, those aha moments, those we want to really embed more, I think, thoughtfully and critically. And then look for also areas of refinement. What is it that you don't feel quite comfortable with yet? Is there something that you just got this kind of itch that I could have done better with this? I'm not really understanding how to get my engagement up on my students, or I'm following the curriculum with fidelity, but you know what? The kids are bored silly, because you got to add some of your own flair. Reflect. This is not always easy. Sometimes we kind of internalize and feel bad and get down on ourselves. And I don't want you to do that. That is not the point of this. We live in this phrase of when you know better, you do better. But the way we know is to actually look at the data and evaluate how those kids are doing. The next thing, the third thing, we should probably start gathering some feedback from our administrators, our teachers, and yeah, even the kids. What was everyone's perception of the intervention process and program? Do your teachers think that you're just sitting in that room eating bonbons because you don't have to do what they're doing? In fact, what you have to do in some cases is more challenging, but I digress. So we're going to look at gathering some feedback. You could create a very simple Google form and push it out to your teachers and your administrators. Get on your principal's calendar and ask for a one-on-one meeting. Do this in advance. Don't just walk by the office and say, hey, I have a question. No, no, no. Your principals are really, really busy people. They've got a million things happening. So send an email and ask for a chat with them about intervention, particularly to look at data, and ask for it about a week in advance. Then if you have something you want them to look at, like your data, an article, something, give them time to process what's happening. Then when you sit down, you can really dig deep, and your principal's not just trying to kind of satisfy you with, yeah, I hear you, but let's really start to make some decisions and reflections. You could also do that with your leadership team. So we want to start digging into what the perception is about your program. Ask the kids, did they like intervention? Do they not like it? Most of the time, you'll know right away. And I always say intervention should be the happiest place on campus. It should be the place that every single kid wants to go. And when you're doing it right, that's what's happening. So the next thing to consider is the program credibility and long-term impact. We have to evaluate the credibility. If you are not formalizing your processes, if you are not having reports that are available with your data that you can share that look professional, whether it's the reports from the assessment data management systems or something that you have created yourself, but we need credibility in our programs. We need legitimacy in our programs. And that means making things very formalized so that you can share with your teams, with your parents, with your leadership, with your school board, and beyond. When you do this, people start to take notice. Somebody, you're really doing something here. I can actually track your progress. I can see the work that you have done. Those things are important to the sustainability of our programs. Sometimes our programs are grant funded and they may be around 1 or 2 years. And if you are not able to prove the value and the effectiveness of this program and the credibility of it, it may go away. And if it goes away, there are kids that are really going to be missing out. So look at those things that you can do to add sustainability beyond your current year. We want to reflect on the long-term impact of your interventions and student outcomes. This is important. When we can look at kids that we had in second grade and now how they're doing in fourth grade and they're on track, fantastic. Those kinds of things really are those anecdotal stories and notes that we can take note of, those success stories that will again help other people see the value in your program. And then the final thing, the fifth thing is, what about planning for continued growth and improvement? Now, planning for continued growth can be a number of things. We can look at adding training to you, the interventionist, training to the teachers, training for the administrators to understand how this component of that MTSS system is actually working within that school. It can also be to add resources. We need to plan for additional resources so that if there is an area of skill deficit that you're seeing and we don't have a curriculum or a resource for it, you've got to do some research and make some investment in that. But the other thing to consider as far as growth is expanding your team. If you are a one-person show, you're the lone soldier, you might be able to meet with, I don't know, 5 kids at a time. Maybe you get 25 kids in a day. Imagine if you had a team of 5 and you could reach 125 kids in a day. And so by looking at how to expand the offerings and the personnel within your program by adding a paraprofessional, adding 2 paraprofessionals, becoming the manager and leader of that team, you've developed your own PLC, and you are then onto a really great and very impactful program. Now, I want to come back and remind you, however, that everything starts with Tier 1. If we have limited funds and resources, Tier 1, those teachers are the first line of defense. And so we need to make sure that they are getting what they need. I've never been a real strong proponent of Tier 2 instruction being in the classroom. And I should say this with a little bit of a caveat. Of course, our teachers are trying to intervene and support their students, absolutely, but not in place of an actual Tier 2 reading intervention program using the walk to read model. To me, it's a much better, more efficient system. Now, there are some important considerations as you are looking at this. For example, if this is your first year in intervention, I want you to know that change takes time. And again, know better, do better. So we have to decide what those small areas of change that we can put in that will have a really big impact. They are things that in many cases don't require extra money. And those are things like, can you add instructional time? If you're pulling your kids out of Tier 1 instruction for intervention, stop. You can't do it. Change that. We have to get a schedule that protects Tier 1 instruction so that no student is pulled out of core instruction to receive intervention. Doesn't cost a thing, but it's going to have a big impact. Also, evaluate the quality of your resources. What do you have that is working great? Keep it, use it. Just because it's a program that is used in Tier 3 intervention doesn't mean it can't be used in Tier 2. There is a misunderstanding that the different tiers require different resources. Doesn't have to be. The things that we can change that, again, don't cost anything and have a big impact is you can change the group size. You can change the intensity or the pacing of the instruction. You could change the amount of time that you are spending. Those are ways that we can add intensity to a program without necessarily having to buy a completely different program. Another thing to consider, if you are looking to have a big impact in your school, think about areas and ways that you can provide some professional development to your teachers. Whether this is, and I think it really should start with just simply sharing the data with them, interpreting the data. That is going to be huge, and that's going to really help to bring, again, that credibility to your program. So one more thing, kids that are significantly behind are going to need multiple years of intervention to catch up, along with really good Tier 1 instruction. So if you are looking at your students' data and you see, well, Johnny went up, the question then is, how much did Johnny go up? Did he go up enough? Because going up is not enough. We have to catch them up. And a way to be able to visualize this is to graph this data. Where did Johnny start? Where did Johnny need to get? What was that aim line? And where is he according to that trajectory throughout the year? Those are the ways that we can really start to take a peek at how we're going to push them even quicker. Okay, so I know that was a lot. End of the year is a little bit busy. You probably have other responsibilities, but I want to remind you, let me get my notes out here. We are looking at analyzing the data, reflecting on your instructional practices, gathering feedback, considering the credibility and sustainability of your program, and then making plans for continued growth and improvement. Summertime is a great time to reflect and make some plans. So, those are the things that we're taking care of at the end of the year. Again, I'd love for you to like, subscribe, share. Those are ways that you can support my channel. Also, if you are interested in talking with me personally about your situation, book a discovery call. I have a calendar link down below in the show notes. Or if you're interested in working with me as a private client, I coach intervention teachers and schools so that I can help you lay out all of this to do exactly what we've talked about today, and that is to bring credibility, legitimacy, and sustainability to your intervention programs. And don't forget, once a month, we're doing live free Q&A sessions that are awesome with other reading interventionists so you can learn from other people around the country. I'm going to drop one other link down below, and that is a coaching interest survey. It's a Google form. If you are interested again in potentially working with me, fill it out and let's have a quick chat. Thank you for watching all the way through. I appreciate it. Thank you for what you do. Have a wonderful end of the school year, and bye for now.